You don't lag right now.
Enemy dropping into the AR. UAV overhead. Got your back, mate. Enemy UAV overhead. Next objective located.
Wiped.
Is this the dude I saw earlier?
Right there.
Oh shit!
Teammate has entered the gulag. Surviving. Get yourself the proper warm-up. We'll be deploying soon. Enemy dropping into the AR.
What the fuck is it?
Battle Royale. Mark a drop point for your team. You'll lead them in. Gas is approaching your position. Move to the safe zone.
Capture contract disregarded.
Thanks, fair idea. Let's do it.
Targets are up. Get to work. Enemy dropping into the AO.
Why isn't it fucking shooting?
To the gulag. If you survive, you earn your freedom. We got a proper fight
Got
here.
43 milliseconds latency
You can
here.
practice your
I'm
aim while
getting
you wait. Launching your
fucking
enemy is
lag
the best way to
fucking
get
stream
inside
galore.
their heads. so is a well-placed stone. Fight's begun. Get yourself sorted. You're up next. Your teammates. Your team is KIA. It's up to you now. You win this fight and you return to the front line. But if you lose, you're done. You're up, soldier. Go sort this fucker out.
Shake it off.
Go back to the fight line.
The fuck was that noise?
Gas is inbound.
Fuck, I got stuck, I couldn't turn around.
UAV overhead. Enemy UAV overhead.
Vendor marked. Vehicle marked. Vendor marked.
inbound. Gas will close and get to the new safe zone. Enemy UAV overhead. We lost that. We'll come back stronger next time. Negative.
I still have the workbench set. We're back in it. It's been a while. This is my test bench, running 3900X RTX 2080. What I use to test a lot of stuff, at least in this instant. Pretty good configuration if you want to game, high frame rates, stream, that kind of thing. But ever since I've started talking about the GPU priority issues and render lag with OBS and live streaming, and working with NVIDIA and the OBS devs to find a solution, which for the most part we found a solution that's running OBS as admin. I have a whole video about that. You can check that out, linked below if you somehow missed it. Big announcement, put that out there a few months back now at this point. But ever since I started talking about it, I got inundated with people asking questions about using dual GPU for encoding and streaming and things like that. And for the most part, I've not wanted to make a video because I don't really want to give that any merit because it's a bad idea. Platforms that aren't HEDT, like Thread. It doesn't make any sense. It hurts your performance. It actually slows down some of the capture modes. It limits what actual capture options you have available to you, and is generally just inadvisable. We're gonna jump in today. I'm Meeplesfox, your stream professor, and we're doing some myth busting today. The myth being that you can use 2 GPUs to improve your streaming performance versus a second PC, or just lowering your game settings. Now, the first question I'm going to address, although I will try to, point this out with numbers as well, the first one that everyone throws out there is using a second GPU for encoding. That on its own is 100% pointless. It is completely pointless. You see, the GPU itself, the actual die on your graphics card, has dedicated silicon on it made specifically for video encoding and decoding. It's dedicated hardware built specifically for that purpose. It's an ASIC. That is literally all it is built for. That's all it can do, and it does not interfere with your actual game performance. It has no penalty on the CUDA cores or the 3D accelerated part of your graphics card, unless you're using psycho-visual tuning or look-ahead, which does use CUDA a little bit. But the main actual encoding process just runs on its own hardware. That's why when I run my FFmpeg NVENC test, where I'm just doing quality analysis of the encoder and just encoding on its own without rendering a game or anything, you look at GPU usage in the task manager or GPU-Z or whatever tool, the actual 3D part, the CUDA part, the part that your games or your video editing programs would use, is at 0% usage, because it's not being used. Meanwhile, just encoding is using the NVENC part. And other than a little bit of bandwidth back and forth, and it's actually a lot of bandwidth as we'll talk about, but other than bandwidth, which your games are not really utilizing that heavily, it's not going to impact anything on your graphics card, because that's what it's built for. It's there, you might as well use it. The second piece to that puzzle, though, is actually testing how it impacts your games if you're trying to just completely use OBS entirely on your graphics card. And you may be thinking, well, what's the difference? When you're live streaming with OBS or XSplit or any other program, there are two processes happening at once. I mean, there's a lot, but there's two using your graphics card that you need to think about. One is that, and this is the same thing with video rendering on your video editor as well. There is the rendering aspect, which is your scene compositing, stacking all of your layers, your webcam frame, your gameplay, your alerts, all of that, stacking those together into one scene and building your video scene out of that. That is rendering, that is compositing, that is what is actually using your graphics card that does use what your game uses. That is the part that uses your game, just like a video editor would, just like playing back, a game would. It's all, using your actual game part of your graphics card. But then you have encoding, which is separate, which takes that video feed that was already built and compresses it into H.264 or HEVC, H.265 if you're recording locally. Those are two separate processes. So the encoding process is fine. The 3D rendering compositing part is what competes with your games, and this is the other thing that people want to try to offload onto your graphics card. Well, we have our 2080 in here, and I want to test and see if on a consumer platform, if we can make it work with a second GPU. That's why I have this right here. This is the NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1650 Super. This is officially the cheapest card you can get from NVIDIA that has, although sometimes there's a 1660 that you can get that trades prices with this, but for what you should normally expect, this is the cheapest card you can get that has NVIDIA's Turing encoder. The base 1650 does not have the same encoder as this, and if you're wondering what that means, I have a few videos from back in last February where I talked about NVIDIA's encoder upgrade that came on hardware with the RTX cards, and that extends from the 1650 Super all the way up to the 1660 Ti and 1660 Super. I believe those are the highest tier cards of the 16 series. And 20 series and 16 series, excluding the original 50, use the new encoder. So this is the cheapest option. I finally, I picked it up right when it came out and haven't been able to make a video about it. I want to talk about it, but also that would be a good option to throw in your rig. Back in the day when we were doing gaming and you wanted a separate PhysX card, people thought that would help out a whole lot. Same idea. People are like, well, I don't want to throw in a 1050 or a 1650 Super along with my main graphics card and use it to encode or process my video stream. So we're going to test that. Now, I'm doing this on AM4, on specifically X570, which has a little bit of an advantage over Intel that might not do us any favors because it has PCIe 4.0, and while it has the same lane assignment, so that our two graphics cards will end up getting put into X8 mode for each graphics card, it does have more bandwidth. So we might not run into the same bottlenecks, at which point I will switch to Intel just to kind of back up what I'm trying to say. But first, we need to test the games first. We're going to test how the games run on their own, how they run with just OBS open, with OBS encoding with NVENC, with OBS encoding with X264, and then add in the second GPU, rinse and repeat. The problem is, this is a lowly 1080p monitor, and 1080p 60 is not enough to really stress your live stream, especially on a 2080. So we need another monitor. I think 1440p 144 Hz will do it. This is the BenQ EX2780Q. Reviewed this a little while back. Great 1440p 144 Hz monitor, low input latency, great HDRI modes. We're gonna hook everything up, do some test recordings, swap GPUs, do some more test recordings, and see how this goes. Alright, so it's been a few hours now, and I have all the benchmarks for the three games, Apex, Modern Warfare, and PUBG, both with OBS running, without OBS running, capturing X264, and NVENC. And something interesting to note is that with this powerful combination, and running OBS as admin, because it really is a fix, by running OBS as admin, we don't actually have any encoding or rendering lag in any of the games that I benchmarked, because that fix kind of prevents it. So what we're really looking at, I was writing down the numbers just in case, and I'll still write them down for the dual GPU because that may change, but what we're really looking at is the impact on your game's frame rate. That's the only perceivable benefit, as I explained, you could have. So next up, we're installing the 1650 Super here. This is from our friends over at Zotac. That made it sound like they sent it out. I picked it up on Amazon. Thanks to the wonderful patrons and float plane supporters. This is a super tiny. This actually has a dual fan card. It only has a single 6-pin